So, I watched Turning Red again.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
And I actually liked it more this time. No, I'm not making this video to appease anyone or anything like that. Turning Red is simply a movie that got better with rewatch. Some films are like that, and I thought that it'd be fair to make a better video on the topic. No one is putting a gun to my head. I really did like the movie this time. I'm not gonna say that Turning Red is flawless or one of Pixar's best. I still do have issues with it, but it's a movie that had a lot less problems on its second viewing. So let's talk about it.
Turning red, go ahead. Don't wanna watch nothing else instead. Let you down, came around. Now we're never gonna live it down.
Turning Red is an interesting film any way that you slice it. It was Pixar's release of 2022, and no matter what you think about it, it's a film that definitely made waves on the internet. People loved the film, people hated the film, some people made weird fucking criticisms about the film. Yes, even besides me. It's definitely understandable that this film would be a topic of discussion, no matter what the actual quality of the film was. It's about the topic of puberty and blossoming sexuality, and it's about that explicitly. It's not a metaphor. Well, it both is and isn't. In today's society, this can be a very taboo topic that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. It's not something that most people like to talk about, which is actually something that's addressed within the film. Considering that it's the elephant in the room, this film takes place less than a year after the September 11th terrorist attacks. Considering that it's an elephant in the room, I suppose we should talk about the puberty thing first. As someone who watches cartoons regularly and has a lot of experience, cartoons, even ones aimed at kids, talking about puberty are not an anomaly. Even within Disney itself, there's both Lloyd in Space and Starverses. They both had episodes revolving around the main character's puberty. To be fair, those episodes are highly metaphorical. Those are essentially alien people going through puberty, and most cartoon episodes that do want to talk about puberty do something very similar. There are still exceptions though. Braceface had an episode explicitly about a literal period, which was further than even Turning Red went. But because I knew all of this, how controversial Turning Red actually was in this regard always read as kind of strange to me. True, it does take its subject matter more seriously and more literal than most of its peers, but animation talking about puberty is not new. I mean, the movie does push slightly. We do see menstrual pads in this movie, and it's mentioned what they're for, but that's not exactly worth the controversy considering anyone can see them at any convenience store. Most of the actual puberty talk is metaphorical, tied into the red panda transformation.
Is it that? Did the red peony bloom?
No! Maybe?
But it's too soon.
The only exception would be May and her friends going boy crazy, and well,
Boys!
that's even less new. Cartoon kids getting crushes or even something a little bit more than that has also been done before. Many times. Now, I don't want to be read the wrong way here. I'm not saying that the film's themes or the subject matter is quote-unquote done to death, because this film isn't just about puberty. It's about trying to find yourself, separate from your family and your upbringing. A lot of the film is about self-discovery and accepting who you're becoming, which are big themes that surround puberty, and is something that's usually not delved into. At least to the extent that this film does. I think that the big problem here, and where most of the controversy came from, is something more systemic than this one film. Turning Red is a movie that actually earns its PG rating. It's been long said that PG means practically G. When we have films like Frozen or even Home on the Range, getting a rating that implies that they require parental guidance. When they don't. Turning Red, on the other hand, is a film that does delve into a subject matter that might actually require parental guidance to navigate. This is a movie that the rating was actually made for. It is more mature than most PG films. Turning Red has a very unique style. It's over the top and very in your face, taking many references and allusions from anime, down to the expressions and the way that the characters are portrayed. Throughout much of the 2010s, all 3D films, no matter what studio they were from, mostly tended to look the same. Princess Elsa wouldn't look too out of place in Shrek Forever After, for example. And after motion capture died, we only had the occasional stop motion film like Kubo and the Two Strings to really do things differently. However, as the decade came to a close, we got films that tried moving away from the typical 3D look. Into the Spider-Verse was probably the big game changer in that regard, but you could also see it in things like the Peanuts movie or the Captain Underpants movie, or Mitchell's vs. the Machines. 3D films were now allowed to be a lot more different than they had been for the past 20 years, where the most important changes were the technological ones. And Turning Red is definitely one of those films that is breaking away from the mold. Not as much as some of the other ones, but it's definitely doing something different here. It's seen best with a lot of the expression work in this film. Turning Red might just have some of the best expressions that I have seen in a 3D animated film. It's not that Pixar is usually bad at this, it's just that this film in particular goes above and beyond to make the best expressions that it can. It comes down to even the character designs, when many of them have big mouths and big eyes, allowing for even subtle emotions to shine. All of this together can give the movie a very in-your-face feeling. The start of the movie is a perfect example of that, with May introducing herself.
I'm Maylin Lee, and ever since I turned 13, I've been doing my own thing, making my own moves, 24/7, 365.
And this can come across as off-putting or alienating, and for my first viewing, it did. May seems cocky and overly self-assured, and that can really put you on the wrong track for enjoying this movie. However, when she's going on and on about herself, everyone else in the scene is being a little bit more honest about her.
I don't got time to mess around. I guess you could call me
Mildly annoying, young lady.
And that clues you in on exactly what the film is going for. The unique style of this movie is in more than just its visuals. And that's because this movie really focuses on perspective. And I think I need to explain that statement. Take another Pixar movie, Up. That movie is from Carl's perspective explicitly. We see the entire story from his point of view and don't get any information that he doesn't have. This is how most films, animated or not, do perspective. Turning Red is different. If most movies would be the main character writing their story, May is writing and directing her story. And in a story about extreme emotions, we're going to see things in extremes. And once I realized this, the movie clicked. For example, in the original Terrible video, I complained that the father Jin was really underplayed. And objectively, he kinda is. But if you take the whole thing as directly from May's perspective, it would be that Jin is usually quiet and in the background of her life, usually pushed out of focus because her mother is the person most in focus at this point in her life. This, I think, is the reason this film can evoke strong reactions in people. The things that May likes about her life are portrayed as the best things ever. Her friends, for example, they are the best part of the movie, as they are the best part of May's life. From almost the start of the movie, we see how well they connect, and throughout each scene, with the exception of one, they are constantly heartwarming. The friends were my favorite part of the movie the first time around, and this still applies. Abby alone is just a meme, but I think that Priya's humor is really underrated. Miriam feels a little bit quiet, a little bit underplayed, but that's understandable. She's the straight man of the group, keeping things grounded, which is a necessary force in a movie that's about emotions going haywire. These are the kind of friends that you absolutely wish you could have had growing up. From being ready with deodorant in the halls to making sure that you're okay in class, to coming in to check up on you after you've been gone for a few days. These three seem like the best thing in the world because, in May's perspective, they are. On the flip side, we have to talk about the worst thing in the world. Okay, so one thing that I got complaints for in the original video, besides the big obvious thing that we'll talk about at the end, is Ming, May's mother. And I have to say, I still have to stick with some of my unpopular or bad opinions. I still don't like Ming very much. She's my biggest sticking point with the movie. Now, I want to make something explicitly clear. Ming is not the worst thing ever. She's not Buck Cluck. She's not even Eleanor from Brave. In fact, Turning Red is one of those movies that I like a whole lot more because I watched Brave. But that was last week's video, we're done with Brave. Ming is where the movie's style ends up hurting it. May views her mother as very overbearing and very clingy. And yeah, we get a lot of examples of that. Perhaps too many examples. It ends up being too over the top to be taken as anything seriously, but it's not funny enough to actually excuse what she does. Ming comes across as creepy a lot of the times. Because the movie is so integrated into May's perspective, we only get bits and pieces of why Ming is doing what she's doing towards the end of the film, when for this to work as well as it can, you need to give her motive much, much sooner. Turning Red is compared to Encanto a lot, and for good reasons. Both films are about generational trauma, coincidentally released within a few months of each other, and I have to say, Encanto does this whole thing a lot better. Within Encanto, one of the first things we see is Alma's perspective. It's how the movie opens up, which immediately lays the foundation of why she's doing what she's doing throughout the entire film. We don't agree with her as audience members, but it comes from a place that we can understand. Turning Red is very tied to May's perspective, to the point where what she doesn't like tend to become the elements that the audience doesn't like. And I don't mean that in a we don't like Frollo because he's evil way. I mean it in a we don't like the gargoyles because they distract and detract from the movie way. What I'm saying about Ming also applies to Tyler as well. He's a jerk and I hate him. And I do know that some parents can be like this in real life. I get that, I understand that, I had one in my own life. And to be fair, that might be why Ming connects with me in such a poor way. Now, she does not ruin the movie or anything like that. She's just the one big thing that prevents this from being one of my favorite Pixar movies ever. Her and Tyler, but no one likes Tyler. Tyler sucks. Almost kill him with the dodgeball again for me, please. Thank you. There is one other nitpick that I have to mention, and that's that this film has an Act 2 breakup, which is really getting on my nerves lately. And it's a particularly bad one here. It's where a lot of the movie's strengths end up turning against it. In most movies where the friends turn on each other or abandon each other towards the end, they happen to become friends during the movie's runtime. But the movie portrays the friendship between these four so strongly, it makes it feel very forced that May wouldn't stand by her friends here. But I probably nitpicked enough. Let's talk about my favorite part of the movie, and that would be the comedy. I actually think that this is the funniest film that Pixar has released. That's kind of an odd statement since Pixar usually doesn't go for comedy, at least as much as this film does, but maybe they should once in a while. As usual, I don't like to spoil jokes the way I do with plot points or emotional beats, but I can tell you some of the stuff that actually worked for me quite nicely. Most notably, the one that already got spoiled in all of the trailers.
OMG!
Yeah, that one makes me laugh every single time I see it, no matter how many times I've seen it. Also, note to trailer makers, please stop spoiling so many good jokes. I know you want to sell the movie, but please save some for the actual movie. Like this one here.
Abby, hit me.
The expression work and the movie style also allows the slapstick to go above and beyond. Turning Red definitely exudes charm, and that charm can be something that either clicks with you or it doesn't. The first time I watched it, it didn't click with me, but on subsequent viewings it did. To put it the best way that I can, I think that this is one of those films that you have to watch twice to really get. I'm not saying that this is like Nolan, it's not Inception, but it's something a little bit more than you usually get out of animated films, at least mainstream ones. It's a good movie. I like it. This film takes place less than a year after the September 11th terrorist attacks. Okay, fine. We will talk about the other elephant in the room. Let's ignore the wording and the specific example and me being a dipshit. The point in general was stupid. Let's take away all of the memes and all of the surrounding stuff. That might be hard to do, but let's just break this down at its core and... The point that I originally made, buried under the everything, was that the film wasn't historically accurate, which is a stupid point to begin with. You know what else isn't historically accurate? Having a diner in ancient South America. Turning Red is not Pocahontas. Even if minor details are wrong or misremembered, it's not like it would be offensive. Most animated films tend to play stuff like this fast and loose anyway. And I don't think that the movie where a teenage girl turns into a giant red panda is trying to be a documentary of the 2000s. Like, this isn't even on the level of the crab from the Little Mermaid remake being a type of crab that can't breathe underwater. It's a red panda puberty film, and this guy is a moron that probably shouldn't be listened to. We cool? Cool. See you next time.